Thank you. My name is Peter. I'm Secretary for a Fly Fishing Club on the Pang, and I'm here on behalf of River Action UK. Thanks to the Commission for the opportunity to ask a question. Madam Chair, before I ask a question, could I be permitted to call out some statistics from Thames Water's presentation where I believe they've misled the Chamber?
Yes.
Thank you. On 21st of September, we were shown a photograph of the Pang from Pangbourne Bridge, and it was stated there was no discharges from Hampstead Norreys on that day. There were, in fact, discharges from Buckleby sewage works for 3 days solid from the 20th to the 23rd of September, from Chapel Row from overnight on the 20th to the 21st of September, and from Beanham on the 20th of September for 45 minutes. We were also shown a slide on 2022 and how the Pang had been downgraded to poor, and it was stated that there were no sewage leaks from Hampstead Norreys. I'd just like to state that there were 42 sewage leaks from other sewage works into the Pang chalk stream on that year. My question is a bit broader on water security. Can Thames Water talk to us about, with the lack of investment over the last 30 years, there's been no new reservoirs, there's been 600 million litres of water leaking a day from your systems. How are you going to ensure the water security for West Berkshire and further down into the capital in your next 5-year plan? Thank you.
Okay, well, the water resources is covered in the water resource management plan, which we have consulted on and published, and is now with the government. And that is in two parts. The first thing is it seeks to get demand down significantly through reducing leakage, through fitting more meters, and through encouraging water efficiency. And if anybody could guarantee us the same climate and the same population, that's all we'd need to do. But clearly climate's changing, population is growing. So we need to have more water resource as well. And our plan talks about a big new reservoir in the vicinity of Abingdon. And it also talks about other measures that will be taken, including a water reuse scheme in West London. And those things together are the more immediate things. In the longer term, we may also need to do water transfers from other parts of the country. But the two main big resource options are the reservoir, which has been talked about for a very long time and has always been opposed, but is now very much back on the agenda. It's up to the government to decide what to do about it. And as I say, a more complicated water reuse scheme in West London that I won't describe now because it'll take 5 minutes.
Thank you.
And those things, I should say, Deb, are also are factored in that we will also be reducing some of our abstractions from sensitive rivers and groundwater sources, the so-called sustainability reductions. That's also factored into the equation of how we meet the demand we expect to get from our customers over that period.
Thank you very much, Peter. Charlotte Hitchmo from the Action for the River Kennet.
Thank you. Richard, you explained that that you were permitted to discharge untreated sewage during periods of rainwater and snowmelt. But could we have some clarity on whether discharges of untreated sewage caused by groundwater are illegal or legal?
So storm overflows due primarily to groundwater infiltration are not permitted.
Thank you. And so bearing in mind that at Hampstead Norreys in 2021, the treatment work spilled for 2,622 hours, and in 2020 was Thames Water's worst performing sewage treatment works in terms of frequency and duration across their business. Has there been an investigation by the Environment Agency, and will that lead to prosecution?
So, as I mentioned in my summary, we've driven the requirement for event duration monitoring to be installed at all storm overflow sites by the end of this current calendar year. And as Richard referred to, those began coming online in 2018, 2019. So yes, we currently have active investigations in assessing that information and assessing its compliance with environmental permits. And we will consider that, and if we confirm any non-compliance, we'll take appropriate action in line with our enforcement and sanctions policy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Martin Wright from East Garston Flood Forum.
Martin Wright, East Garston Flood and Pollution Forum. First, can I just, before I ask my question, make an observation or a thought? If you've talked a lot about sewage discharges being highly diluted before they go into the river, I'm thinking if I drink a double whiskey neat, or drink a double whiskey in a gallon of water, I think I've still consumed a double whiskey. That's just an observation. Maybe I'm wrong. My question, we've met before. You attended, Richard, a meeting on in May when we discussed East Garston. I'm going to be very parochial. I'm just going to talk about East Garston. At that meeting, you gave a commitment to keep us informed about plans that were underway for the sewage network repairs in East Garston or our part of the Lambourne Valley. In fact, it was said then that some investigations had already happened and the sewage network is inundated with groundwater, and hopefully we can find something significant and can start work on it in the summer. And hopefully by next winter, we'll be able to test the theory. Nothing has happened. We've not heard anything about this work plan. I wrote to Thames Water earlier in September, and eventually I got a reply back saying that we have found a significant volume of water coming into the network across Eastbury, which affects us, and we will be putting together a business justification to secure funding to get these locations sealed. So yet again, that's another year gone. And we've had this year after year after year. You make commitments and somehow they don't seem to happen, not with any speed. I know some repairs were carried out, and I think those were referred to in your presentation on your slide, but that was about 3 years ago, I think. So I don't know whether you're, well, I'm sure you are aware, the groundwater levels at the moment in East Garston, in the Lambourne Valley generally, are the highest they have been at this time of the year for at least 10 years. The records that we keep just locally indicate that, and we're right at the top. Last year, the groundwater at this level was some 2 meters lower than it is now. We have had quite a wet summer, latter part of the summer. Now, I'm not a hydrologist, but common sense tells me groundwater levels are high. We've had a lot of rain. That water level this winter, this coming winter, is going to be high. Last year, we...
Mr. Wright, sorry, are you able to clarify what your question is, please?
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
So you can get the drift where I'm coming from. Last year, or in previous years, you've had 3 options to deal with this. 1, allow the streets and gardens to flood with sewage. 2, dumping it in the river. Or 3, tankers, a fleet of tankers working 24/7. Which option are you going to choose this year?
So last year, I believe we had tankers there, which was our response to, we do have a overflow, and that overflow, we need to do some work on that because we don't think it reflected exactly what went on, but we did put tankers out there. That will be our response this year. We have looked at other options. We used other options in the Lambourne area, and we have used other options in other areas. I don't think we've got the room to do that work around that mitigation whilst we continue to do our investigations and do the work that we've been doing. So it will be a tanker to keep on top of that.
So we can look forward to 24/7 tankers coming.
I don't
through the
enjoy
village.
doing it, and it's the last resort. It literally is the last resort. If I don't, I'm going to be discharging to a watercourse. I don't want to do that either, as much as that water is diluted. So when we have surcharge in other areas of the valley, we have monitored closely and we did not have an impact to that watercourse through that discharge because it was so diluted. We had a filter unit to take out the solids, because historically when it comes out of a manhole, it goes unfiltered. And when it's unfiltered, it can go to watercourse. We put a filter in and all the surcharge that would otherwise have left a manhole, we filtered it and allow the liquid that year, or the times we've used that, we've demonstrated there's been no impact. But it shows how much of the things that are in the sewers that shouldn't be in there. But we don't have the facility in East Garston to put that in.
So why wasn't the work done earlier?
Sorry.
Why wasn't the work done
We
earlier?
still have an opportunity. We hope to deliver that work. We've got a lot of work we need to deliver. There's a lot of places we need to do this work. The teams are going to work up to the point where we cannot do it because of the groundwater.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Keith Hoddenott from Thatch and Flood Forum.
Thank you, Chair. My question is of a general and a national basis. When I joined the Thatch and Flood Forum, the colleagues there said that at a planning appeal, the planning inspector, after evidence from the developer, said that drainage was not a planning matter. Now, my point is that if you have a future business plan which sets out all the spend on different projects which have come to the fore, that if suddenly a development comes along which you hadn't planned for, then it's obvious that if there are deficiencies in the infrastructure, both in the sewers and at the sewage treatment plant and pumping stations, then if there is insufficient capacity to take the new development, then surely it should be refused on planning as being premature. And if the developer wishes to pursue the development, then he puts his hand in his pockets and gets you the money to do the improvement so that the development can go ahead. This used to happen before 1974. Now, the inability of the government to enact Schedules 3 and 42 is a prime reason for developers to avoid having their systems adopted. And I feel that, and I've been told, that Thames are not a statutory consultee on planning matters. Now, is that true? And therefore, should we not be the EA, the water companies and councils be more robust with developers in refusing developments which will endanger the existing structure? And if they win on an appeal, then it means that these schemes in the older parts of the area where there are gross infiltration due to the nature of the pipework which was installed in the 50s, those issues will be put back because you've had to put in improvements to your existing system to cater for a new development.
We are statutory consultees on local plans, but not on individual planning applications. So we rely on liaison between our developer services team and council officers. And I have to say that works very well in this council. So we do know what is coming in terms of developments. And we will assess whether first of all, whether the sewer network has the capacity to take the additional flow that we're being asked to take. If it's not going to be sufficient, then the developer charges, which all developers pay for all developments, that creates a pot of money which is used to expand the network when necessary. So we will, if we need to expand the network, we will put in place measures to expand it or to take water out somewhere else, or to basically to make sure we can cope with the amount of water we're going to get from the new development. If we can't do that within the timescale of the developer's aspirations, then we can ask the council to put in what's called a Grampian condition, which basically says that development shouldn't be occupied until the network reinforcement has been completed. There is a twist to that because developers tell us that they're going to give us their foul water. And of course, they say they're going to make perfectly good arrangements for the surface water to go somewhere else. And as we talked earlier, the foul flow is very, very much less than the surface flow. Where we do get problems is where developers say one thing and do another, and we end up with the surface water. So there is a question here about building regulations, about proper inspections, and whether we actually get what we're supposed to get. The other one is if the flow is going to tip the sewage works over capacity. And what we do there is if we are not confident that the works can robustly meet all of its compliance requirements with this additional flow, we will again ask for a Grampian condition to be imposed until such time as we can expand the works. And the money for that, confusingly, comes from the business planning process as a growth impact. So in the business plan, you will see some things highlighted as growth schemes, where we've had a steer from the council that there's more development coming. So we don't want to put in we don't want to ask for Grampian conditions. We can't impose them, the council does, because we don't want to stop house building. I mean, that's not our job. Our job is to provide a good water and wastewater service. But if we physically can't do it in the time available, then we will ask the council for a Grampian condition. They have the responsibility on this, not us.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Kay Lacey from Pang Valley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Thames. This is a question for Karen. Karen, thank you. It's really good to hear that Hampstead Norris work is going to be starting soon. I just wondered if anybody in the parish council had been informed. We haven't heard. They have? We haven't heard anything.
Well, there are letters literally going out, I think today or tomorrow. I've seen the letter and it's signed, so it won't be long before it hits people's doorsteps.
Thank you. So this is, my question really is about the sewer depth monitors and infiltration. So we know that we've got a lot of the areas in the Pang catchment that suffer from groundwater infiltration. And your GISMs, and I've read quite a few of them, are very reliant on there being reliable data from these sewer depth monitors, as well as CCTV and that sort of thing. We've had access to the sewer data from the sewer loggers, but there are problems with gaps due to lack of transmission. Now, we've been informed from Thames that these gaps are due to poor network coverage, as Thames have opted to go with one chosen supplier on economic grounds. If there's insufficient coverage with Thames's chosen supplier, could we ask that Thames get multi-network SIMs installed so that reliable data can be had, which will then enable you and us to fine-tune exactly where the infiltration is coming in, which will enable your sewer lining or other investment work to be effectively planned. Without this information, we can't really gain an accurate picture as to exactly where the infiltration is coming in.
Thank you. Yes, there has been some data issues with receiving some of that information in. There is ongoing conversations around what loggers and where to put them and how to move forward. We had a big programme to install many loggers, and that's under review because we want them to be available. There's no point us progressing, putting them in, unless they are all coming back. So I will certainly get this area, because it is a particular, obviously a hot spot, highlighted and see if we can progress, particularly in that area, for a solution for that. With regards to the Hampstead Norris, apologies, I didn't mention it earlier. So the letters are going out. They will be doing some surveys. So the work they're starting is survey work. I think it's feeding back on your microphones, sorry. Yeah. So they will be doing some survey work on the section 104As, which is the private sewers that were adopted in 2011, because for much of the estate that isn't mapped at this stage unless we've had previous incidents or blockages, because we map it when we're there. There are going to be investigations across all that piece, and as they find pieces, they're looking to follow up with the lining behind them as well. So whilst there is some currently known places to deliver, that should be being delivered in conjunction with the survey work, with an end date of, I think it's around May next year, to finish the piece out there, all dependent on that groundwater level. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, because we're concerned that groundwater levels are higher
They are
than last
high.
year. And with that, that's the other reason why we need accurate transmission data coming through, because it's now or never really to get that sort of information.
Absolutely.
And the area that we're particularly looking at is Stamford Dingley, which was mentioned by Christopher earlier.
Yeah, and that is Stamford Dingley is October, so it's this month delivery. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Unfortunately, Councillor Wollaston, who was online, has had to leave the meeting, so he won't be able to ask a question. So apologies to Councillor Wollaston. So last but not least, we have Paula Saunderson from Newbury Clay Hill Flood Forum, who I believe is online. Yeah. Would you like to ask your question, Paula?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
I can't start my video because the host won't allow me.
Okay, we can hear you clearly.
Right. Hello, thank you very much, Richard, Karen and Mr. Willis, for attending tonight. I have sent through quite a lot of evidence to both of you concerning the surface water systems, drainage systems for Newbury, called the Northbrook Ditch. And I made quite a few requests. Is there any way that you can help us with the fact that the surface water that comes out of the outfall is heavily polluted? When it rains, we get black pollution, and it has now settled to the depth of 1.5 metres in certain places, and it's now quite noxious and dangerous. So Karen, if you're looking at our whole confluence area between the Lambourne and the Kennet and our groundwater around Newport Road and all the rest of it, because that actually feeds into the Northbrook Ditch, would you be able to look at the the surface water systems as well as the sewage and the groundwater?
Yeah, Paula, we've all been poring over the photographs and videos that you've sent, and there's a whole. No, it was absolutely fine. I mean, it makes depressing viewing, because clearly from the few pictures that show it in good conditions, it looks as though it's good, clean spring water flowing along there. But there's a whole mess of different issues, from suds that don't work to industrial pollution to highway runoff, and no surface water management plan. So I'm going to pass over to Karen in a second for more detail. But in principle, what we'd like to suggest is a tripartite meeting, or possibly series of meetings between ourselves, the Environment Agency and the Council, to get the maps out and try and look at all of the issues, and then work out what needs to be done, what order it needs to be done, and where can we get the funding to do it. Because clearly there's a lot of things wrong there. It's not a single cause or problem, but it needs to be looked at holistically by the three agencies. Karen.
And just to follow up on that, Paula, just to split it into some of the different fragments that have been passed over, I think some of it came from a development that was discharging groundwater, which then turned the watercourse a cloudy, milky colour. As soon as that was notified to us, we identified the cause of that, and within one evening they stopped continuing.
Yeah, sorry, Karen, that happened again today.
I've been out there.
We had another white pollution today, and we haven't had one for about a year. So we think we know what causes those.
Okay, well, I'll catch up with you if it's happening again. All I can reiterate is I need phone calls each time this happens. I know it can be frustrating to phone through, but today Richard shared with everybody the ability to report online. I would like to know at the time that these are happening, so we can get that quick response to find it whilst it's in action, because it helps us trace it back up the line where it's coming from. So I'm not aware of any white discharge today. I was out there all afternoon seeing a nice clear brook, but if it happened outside those hours, then yeah, we'll follow it up. In terms of the oil, we have done some thorough and broad investigations. We've got one particular location of major interest, and we're following up with our network protection team, who undertake site visits to look at fat management of cooking oils and other products. They will investigate, and if there is no fat management in place, then we will issue our polite letters asking them to install, and we'll continue our visits until we see an improvement in that. But as I say, please do highlight when these happen, because I couldn't find them for everything that was sent through. I couldn't see a massive history of when we've been able to attend to investigate during the incidents.
Well, I've since August, I've been in the gardens on 3 or 4 occasions where I've waited for your engineers, and they've obviously responded. But you're right, the history of this has not been well reported, and it's only because of my interest and basically the ecological side of it, because wildlife is now suffering and dying. Because I've owned property in this area and seen this brook deteriorate gradually, and now my involvement with the residents has brought it to the fore. So as long as we can get that that's what my request is, that we have the 3 risk management authorities looking at this together, to try and find some solutions to what is becoming a worsening pollution, not from poo, but it's from industrial pollution of some sort, and especially when it rains.
Yeah, thank you, Paula.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, everyone, for your questions. Much appreciated. I think it's been a really, really useful meeting this evening. I'm very grateful that you've come along and you've answered so many questions. Thank you very much to members for their very robust and detailed questions, and also members of the public. I'm sorry that we weren't able to give you more time. I'm sure we could sit here for several more hours and go through it in detail. Mr. Oliver has made very comprehensive notes. Minutes of the meeting. This recording evening will also